She's trespassing. Arrest her now. This measuring tape-wielding Karen called actual cops on my wife for watering flowers at her own lake cabin. The officer's hand went straight to his handcuffs while Karen smirked, clipboard ready to document Sarah's arrest. My heart stopped. We were about to lose everything. But in the next 5 minutes, something happened that made 50 million jaws drop worldwide. Those cops didn't just let Sarah go, they saluted her. My flower-loving wife had been hiding a secret that turned Karen's victory into instant karma. Before you watch full story, comment down from which country are you watching. And don't forget to subscribe. Let me take you back to where this all started. Our lake cabin isn't just property, it's a piece of heaven on earth. Built in 1952 by Sarah's grandfather with his own 2 hands, every wooden beam tells a story. The wraparound porch where Sarah's grandmother taught her to fish still has the same rocking chairs from 70 years ago. The ancient maple tree with S+M 2018 carved in it stands guard over our little paradise. Yeah, I'm cheesy like that, carved it on our honeymoon. The handmade dock stretching into Crystal Lake was built by Sarah's father in 1985, the same year he taught her to swim in these very waters. Sarah inherited it 3 years ago when her grandmother passed, and it became our weekend sanctuary. Every Friday after work, we drive 4 hours from the city, windows down, terrible 90s music blasting, leaving behind the corporate world for 48 hours of pure peace. The mornings here were magic. Sarah would wake before sunrise, make coffee in her grandmother's old percolator. The thing was older than both of us combined but made the best brew you'd ever taste. She'd sit on that porch wrapped in the quilt her grandma made, watching the mist rise off the lake like nature's own theater show. Sometimes a family of deer would wander through and Sarah would whisper, "Morning, neighbors," like they were old friends. I'd usually stumble out an hour later, hair looking like I'd been struck by lightning, and she'd laugh that laugh that made me fall in love with her 8 years ago. No HOA dictators destroying the peace. No clipboard-wielding bullies making up rules. Just the sound of loons calling across the water and maybe old Pete practicing his morning fishing routine across the bay. Then Patricia Wellington moved in next door, and paradise started dying 1 measured inch at a time. Picture this, Tuesday morning, 7:30 a.m. sharp. Sarah sitting on the porch, coffee steaming, still in her grandmother's faded gardening apron. The sun's barely up, painting the lake golden, when this woman appears like she materialized from the depths of Karen hell itself. Razor-sharp bob that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. You know the type, probably demanded to speak to the hairdresser's manager after getting exactly what she asked for. Designer blazer that screamed, "I have opinions about your life choices." And the measuring tape. Oh, that measuring tape. Bright yellow, professional grade, clipped to her belt like a sheriff's badge of authority. She didn't walk up our driveway. She marched. Each step calculated for maximum intimidation. "Excuse me," she announced, already unclipping that tape measure like she was about to draw a weapon. Her voice had that particular tone, sweet on the surface but with razors underneath. "I'm Patricia Wellington, your new HOA president." She said it like she expected applause. Or maybe a bow. Sarah, still half asleep and wholly unimpressed, took another sip of coffee before responding. "We don't have an HOA here. That's kind of the whole point of lake living." Patricia's smile could have frozen hell solid. "We do now. I've organized one. Democracy in action." She whipped out her tape measure with a flourish that would make a gunslinger jealous. Without asking permission, she bent down and measured our grass. 3.1 inches. Maximum allowed is 3 inches. Then she pivoted to our dock, measuring its length. 47 feet. Regulation states 45 feet maximum. She even measured our bird feeder, for crying out loud. 14 inches diameter. Approved sizes are 12 or 16 inches. Sarah just watched, sipping her coffee like she was observing a nature documentary about a particularly fascinating species of crazy. I would have exploded right then. Probably would have grabbed that measuring tape and used it to measure the distance my foot could travel up her behind. But Sarah, she had that look I'd seen before. Usually right before she demolished someone in a debate. She was studying Patricia like a scientist observing a new strain of virus, cataloging every symptom for future treatment. "These are all violations," Patricia continued, scribbling on her clipboard with aggressive precision. "I'll be filing formal notices. You'll receive fines accordingly." Then she looked at our cabin, our beautiful 70-year-old cabin, and her nose wrinkled like she'd smelled something rotten. "This structure is clearly not up to community standards. When was it last painted?" Sarah set down her mug very carefully. 1998. My father's last project before he died. Patricia made a note that somehow sounded dismissive. Unacceptable. Current bylaws require repainting every 5 years with approved colors only. She pulled out a color swatch that looked like 50 shades of beige. I'll add that to your violations. That's when Sarah's eye twitched. Just once. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. That tiny twitch meant someone had just made a very, very big mistake. Those flowers, Patricia continued, pointing at Sarah's grandmother's prize-winning daffodils, exceed the 8-inch maximum for decorative flora. They'll need to be cut back or removed. The flowers that had bloomed every spring since 1952. The flowers Sarah's grandma had planted the day the cabin was finished. A celebration of new beginnings and dreams made real. Sarah stood slowly. Even in her pajamas and old apron, she somehow looked dangerous. Those flowers stay. Patricia smirked, clearly thinking she'd found a pressure point. Rules are rules, Mrs. Mitchell. The way she said it, that slight pause, that knowing tone, it made my blood run cold. Sarah's face didn't change, but her knuckles went white around her mug. That afternoon, Mrs. Henderson shuffled over from the cabin on the other side. At 72 years old, she'd lived on this lake longer than anyone except Sarah's family. Her hands shook as she sat on our porch, accepting the lemonade I offered. That woman is dangerous, she whispered, even though Patricia's house was 200 yards away. She made the Rodriguez's move last month. The Chens before that. Sarah leaned forward, her instincts kicking in. How exactly did she manage that? She finds violations nobody knew existed, Mrs. Henderson explained, her voice trembling. Files complaints with the county. Makes life hell until people sell. Always for way less than the property's worth. Way less. She leaned closer, dropping her voice even more. I heard she used to be some big real estate developer. Had a company that built those ugly strip malls all over the state. Then some prosecutor caught her doing something illegal. Fraud or something. Lost everything. Company gone, money gone, reputation destroyed. Sarah's eyes narrowed. A prosecutor, you said? Mrs. Henderson nodded. That's what I heard. Apparently it was brutal. The prosecutor didn't just win, they destroyed her. Patricia spent 3 years in court, ended up bankrupt, had to sell everything. They say she had a complete breakdown. Disappeared for a while. Then she shows up here, Mrs. Henderson continued, all smiles and measuring tapes. But I can see the rage in her eyes. She's planning something. Something big. That's when 10-year-old Jake popped up from behind the porch rail where he'd been hiding. The kid lived 2 cabins down and was always recording videos for his YouTube channel. Mrs. Sarah, this lady's measuring your flowers again. This is better than my fishing videos. We rushed outside to find Patricia actually measuring the height of each individual daffodil. She had a whole chart, documenting each flower like she was conducting a scientific study in pettiness. These exceed the 8-inch maximum, Patricia announced, not even looking up from her clipboard. 8.3 inches average. Unacceptable. Sarah's eye twitched again. Twice this time. Those flowers are from 1952, her voice was dangerously quiet. They were planted by my great-grandmother. Rules are rules, Patricia repeated, that smirk spreading. I'll file this violation today. First fine is $75. Continues daily until corrected. She stood, brushing imaginary dirt off her pressed khakis. You have 24 hours to comply. As she turned to leave, she paused, looking back over her shoulder. You know, Sarah, this place really is lovely. Shame it's so outdated. But don't worry. I'm sure the next owners will appreciate its potential. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Jake, still filming, whispered, Yo, subscribers, did she just threaten Mrs. Sarah? This is getting crazy. For the first time, I saw something in Sarah's face I'd never seen before. Not quite fear but recognition. Like a chess player suddenly realizing their opponent knows all their moves. The next morning, 6 a.m., I woke to find Sarah's side of the bed empty. Through the window, I could see her on the dock, phone pressed to her ear, pacing back and forth like she was working a case. When she came back inside an hour later, she had that look, the same focused intensity I'd seen when she was deep in research for her work at the law firm. Who were you talking to? I asked over coffee. Just making some calls, she said, but something in her voice told me there was more to it. Patricia Wellington isn't who she says she is. What do you mean? Sarah pulled out her laptop. I did some digging last night. Patricia Wellington used to be Patricia Westbrook. She ran Westbrook Development Corporation until 5 years ago. She showed me newspaper articles, court documents, bankruptcy filings. She was prosecuted for real estate fraud. bilked investors out of millions. Lost everything when she was convicted. But here's the interesting part, Sarah continued, clicking to another article. The prosecutor who brought her down was... She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the screen. Was what? I prompted. Sarah's face had gone very pale. The prosecutor was Assistant Attorney General S. Mitchell. My stomach dropped. Sarah Mitchell. You. She nodded slowly. I prosecuted her 5 years ago. She knows exactly who I am. This isn't random, Mark. She's been planning this. Over the next week, the violations came fast and furious. Day 1, $75 for flower height violations. Day 2, $100 for unapproved dock length. Day 3, $125 for excessive bird feeder visibility. Day 4, $150 for non-regulation mailbox placement. Day 5, $200 for noise violations, birds singing before 8 a.m. Each fine was delivered by a nervous-looking college kid named Brad who clearly didn't want to be there. The poor guy looked more miserable with each visit, his hands shaking as he handed over the notices. By Friday, we'd racked up $650 in fines for essentially existing. This is insane, I shouted after the 5th notice. She's fining us for bird singing. What's next? Charging us because the sun reflects off the lake. Sarah, meanwhile, stayed eerily calm. She photographed each notice, organized them in a folder labeled Evidence in her precise handwriting. She'd thank Brad politely each time, which seemed to confuse him more than anger would have. But I knew my wife. This wasn't acceptance. This was preparation. Saturday morning brought the nuclear option. Brad appeared at our door at 8 a.m. looking like he'd been crying. The paper he handed Sarah was different, heavier, more official. Final notice screamed across the top in red letters. Pay $2,500 in accumulated fines or face foreclosure proceedings, Brad read, his voice breaking. You have 7 days to comply, or the HOA will initiate legal action to force the sale of your property. For the first time since this nightmare started, I saw Sarah's hands shake. Not with fear. Sarah didn't do fear. This was rage. Pure and barely controlled. She held that paper, staring at her grandmother's photo on the mantel. The one where her grandma stood in front of this very cabin, proud and strong, the day she'd paid off the mortgage in 1965. Sarah's voice came out as a whisper. This cabin is all I have left of her. She taught me to swim in this lake. Taught me to stand up to bullies right on that porch. Taught me that justice matters more than power. A single tear ran down her cheek. In 8 years of marriage, through her father's death, through every hard thing life threw at us, I'd never seen Sarah cry. Hey, I pulled her close, feeling her tremble against me. We'll fight this together. That's what we do, right? Team Mitchell against the world. She nodded against my chest, then pulled back. The tear was gone. In its place was something that made me simultaneously proud and slightly terrified. Steel. Pure, refined, sharp as hell steel. You're right, she said, and her voice had changed. Gone was the shaky whisper. This was Sarah's courtroom voice. The one that made opposing lawyers sweat. Grandma didn't raise a quitter. And she definitely didn't raise someone who'd let a bitter, measuring tape-wielding criminal steal what 3 generations built. Sarah transformed our living room into what looked like a command center from a legal thriller. Papers covered every surface, the coffee table, the couch, even spread across the floor in some complex pattern only she understood. Her laptop had 20 tabs open, and she'd set up a second monitor she'd brought from work. Professional mode, activated. What exactly are you doing? I asked, bringing her coffee number 4. She'd switched to her research fuel, dark roast, no sugar, no cream, no mercy. What I do best, she replied, fingers flying across the keyboard. Research, due diligence, and finding the truth. She started with public records. HOA documents, property filings, business registrations. Within 2 hours, she'd uncovered Patricia's entire fake empire. Look at this, she showed me bank statements she'd somehow acquired. July 15th, $15,000 deposited to HOA account for landscaping improvements. But look outside, see any new landscaping? I peered out the window at the same scraggly bushes and patchy grass that had been there since we arrived. She stole 15 grand. Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Allegedly. But I need more proof. Embezzlement is serious, but I need to show a pattern. That's when the universe decided to help us out. Saturday night, Jake came running over with his tablet, out of breath and practically vibrating with excitement. Mrs. Sarah. You gotta see this. I was filming the sunset and I caught her. He'd been recording a time-lapse video when he accidentally captured Patricia on her phone, pacing her deck. The audio was crystal clear. "Yes, $500,000 worth of lakefront," Patricia's voice carried across the water. "I'll have it cleared in 60 days. The current owners won't be a problem. I have methods." We heard a pause as the person on the other end spoke. "Don't worry about Sarah Mitchell," Patricia continued. "I know exactly who she is. She destroyed my life 5 years ago and now I'm going to return the favor. She thinks she's hidden behind her married name, but I've been planning this for years." Another pause. "Once I force her out, we can buy the whole shoreline for pennies on the dollar. These people have no idea what their property is really worth." Jake's eyes were wide as saucers. "Mrs. Sarah, I think you're in trouble." Sarah smiled, but it wasn't her usual warm smile. This was something colder, more calculating. "No, Jake. Patricia's the one in trouble. She just confessed to conspiracy, fraud, and extortion. On camera." Sunday morning arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes you forget evil exists. Sarah knelt by her grandmother's daffodils, wearing the same gardening gloves that had been passed down through 3 generations. She hummed an old hymn, Amazing Grace, the same tune her grandmother used to sing while teaching her about patience, growth, and knowing when to fight back. I was manning our ancient grill, the one Sarah's grandpa had welded together from scrap metal in 1963. Mrs. Henderson had brought her famous apple pie, and Jake was in full content creator mode, filming what he called his Peaceful Sunday special. "Welcome back to Lake Life with Jake," he narrated into his phone. "Today we're keeping it chill with some garden content. And look, Mrs. Sarah's working on those famous daffodils." Sarah looked up from her flowers, dirt smudged on her cheek, hair pulled back in her grandmother's silk scarf. She waved at the camera, looking nothing like the sharp-dressed prosecutor who made criminals sweat. "Hi everyone," she said with that easy smile. "Remember to stop and smell the flowers. Life's too short not to." That's when we heard them. Sirens. Not the distant kind that might be heading somewhere else. These were close, getting closer, and clearly heading our way. My spatula froze mid-flip. Sarah's hand stilled on the watering can. Even Jake went quiet, camera still rolling, but his usual chatter stopped cold. The sirens cut off, but the lights kept spinning, throwing blue and red patterns across our perfect afternoon like some demented disco ball. Not one car. 2. They pulled into our gravel drive with the kind of purpose that made my stomach drop. This wasn't a social call. Officer Rodriguez stepped out first, a man built like someone who'd played linebacker before choosing a badge. His hand rested on his weapon, not gripping, just resting. But the gesture was clear. This was official business. His partner emerged from the second car, younger but no less serious. Both had their body cameras on, little red lights blinking like electronic eyes. Then she appeared. Patricia burst from behind the thick lilac bushes that separated our properties. She'd been hiding there who knows how long, waiting for this moment. Leaves clung to her previously perfect hair. Her white blazer had green stains from the foliage. Her face was flushed with triumph and rage, making her look like some deranged suburban warrior. "Officers. There she is. The criminal." She pointed at Sarah with one hand while waving a stack of papers with the other. "This woman assaulted me yesterday. Stole from the HOA treasury. She's trespassing on HOA property right now." Her measuring tape swung wildly from her belt with each gesture, catching the light like a pendulum of doom. "Check her record. She's using a fake name. She's a fraud." Officer Rodriguez approached slowly, professionally, the way cops do when they're not sure if they're dealing with a simple dispute or something more serious. "Ma'am," Rodriguez addressed Sarah, voice neutral but firm, "we received a call about assault and trespassing. I'm going to need you to step away from the flowers." Sarah set down her watering can with deliberate calm. The metal made a soft clink against the stepping stone, one her grandfather had made by pressing lake stones into concrete when her mother was born. She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her knees, looking for all the world like someone who'd just been interrupted during a pleasant afternoon rather than accused of crimes. "Don't let her fool you," Patricia shrieked, spittle flying. "She's dangerous. She threatened me in front of 50 witnesses. She's a fraud using a fake name." Rodriguez's partner, Officer Chin, according to his nameplate, took position. 2 cops, one Sarah and Patricia, vibrating with vindictive energy. The math wasn't good. Jake had gone from excited to terrified, his camera catching everything but his usual commentary replaced by heavy breathing. Oh man, he whispered. "This is really bad." Mrs. Henderson gripped her pie plate like armor. "Officers, there must be some mistake. Sarah wouldn't hurt a fly. This woman has been harassing. Ma'am, please stay back, Chin instructed, hand up in a stop gesture. The atmosphere shifted from Sunday afternoon peace to something electric and dangerous. Ma'am, Rodriguez stepped closer to Sarah, I'm going to need to see some identification. That's when I snapped. Every protective instinct fired at once. I launched myself between them, spatula still in hand like the world's most ridiculous weapon. That's my wife. This is our property. We have deeds from 1952. Papers. History. She's lying. My voice cracked with panic. This woman is insane. She measures grass. She finds birds for singing. She tried to steal our home. Sir, I need you to step back. Rodriguez's voice carried authority, but my husband's instincts weren't listening. No. You don't understand. This woman has been terrorizing us. She's the criminal here. She embezzled $15,000. We have proof. USB drives. Recordings. Evidence. Sarah touched my arm, gentle but firm. The same touch that had calmed me through 100 smaller storms. Mark, it's okay. It's not okay. I was definitely crying, probably yelling, definitely looking like a madman with a spatula. They can't do this. You didn't do anything wrong. Trust me, she said, and something in her eyes, that same calm certainty I'd seen in news footage of her big cases, made me step back. But my legs were shaking. My heart was trying to escape through my ribs. This was my biggest fear made real. Losing her, losing our home, losing everything to someone's vindictive lies. Rodriguez reached for his cuffs. The metal caught the sunlight as he pulled them from his belt. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands. Officer Rodriguez, Sarah interrupted, voice carrying the kind of calm that comes from facing down worse than this. I understand you're doing your job. You received a call. You need to respond. You need to ensure everyone's safety. I respect that. She paused, meeting his eyes directly. May I please retrieve my identification? It's in my pocket. She gestured to her gardening apron, the one with sunflowers printed on it that I'd bought her as a joke but she actually loved. Rodriguez paused, caught between procedure and something in Sarah's tone that suggested this wasn't going the way he expected. He nodded cautiously. Ma'am, no sudden movements. Sarah reached into her apron pocket with the same deliberate care she used when handling evidence. Not rushed, not worried. Like she'd done this dance before, knew every step, every beat, every moment where it could go wrong. She pulled out a leather wallet, not her everyday one with the coffee shop loyalty cards and grocery receipts. This was different. Official looking. Worn but maintained. The kind of leather that got better with age. She opened it with practiced ease, removed a card. Not a driver's license. Not a credit card. Something else. Something that caught the light differently. She held it out to Rodriguez. My identification, officer. Rodriguez took the card, probably expecting another driver's license, another name to run through the system. He looked at it. His expression went through a transformation I'll never forget. Confusion first, this wasn't what he expected. Then recognition, the seal, the title, the name. Then his eyes went wide. Wider than I'd ever seen a human's eyes go. This says. He looked up at Sarah, then back at the card, then up again like his brain was refusing to process what his eyes were seeing. His voice came out strangled. Assistant Attorney General Sarah Mitchell. The world stopped. Everything stopped. The birds stopped singing. The wind stopped blowing. Even the lake seemed to pause its gentle lapping. Jake dropped his tablet. It hit the ground with a crack that would normally have devastated him, but he didn't even notice. What? He shrieked. Mrs. Henderson gasped so hard she nearly dropped her pie. A whole slice slid off the plate but she didn't move to stop it. Patricia made a sound like someone had punched her in the stomach while she was gargling. A horrible, strangled noise that might have been no, or might have just been her soul leaving her body. Rodriguez's entire demeanor transformed in an instant. His spine straightened like someone had replaced it with a steel rod. His shoulders squared. His chin lifted. The casual authority was replaced by something else. Respect. And maybe a little fear. He snapped to attention. Full military salute. The kind they teach at the academy. The kind reserved for the highest honors. Ma'am? Assistant Attorney General Mitchell. I had no idea. It is an absolute honor. Chin scrambled over, nearly tripping on his own feet. What's happening? Why are you? Rodriguez showed him the ID with shaking hands. Chen's jaw didn't just drop, it unhinged like a snake's. He fumbled his own salute, almost hitting himself in the face in his haste. Ma'am? We're so sorry for the confusion. We had no idea. This is... Oh my God. I stood there frozen. That was my wife. My Sarah. The woman who made terrible dad jokes and cried at dog adoption commercials and could never remember to close kitchen cabinets. Getting saluted by cops. My brain felt like it was buffering, trying to load this new information. Patricia stumbled backward like she'd been physically struck. No, check it again. It's fake. She's lying. She can't be. I researched. I know who she is. Her voice broke into something between a scream and a sob. Rodriguez turned to her, and his voice went from respectful to ice-cold in an instant. Ma'am, are you suggesting that the Assistant Attorney General of our state is using fraudulent identification? Are you aware that's a serious accusation against a state official? But... Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Sarah finally spoke, her voice carrying the weight of truth and authority. Officers, I didn't want to use my position. This is my grandmother's cabin. I use my married name here because this is my private life. My sanctuary. I've never asked for special treatment. I've never thrown my title around. She turned to face Patricia directly. But when someone calls the police with false allegations, when someone tries to use the law as a weapon. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. You knew who I was, Patricia. You've known all along. You targeted me specifically because 5 years ago I prosecuted you for real estate fraud. You lost your company, your wealth, your reputation, all because you broke the law. Sarah's voice remained steady, professional. And instead of learning from it, you came here for revenge. Jake, who'd been silent in shock, suddenly found his voice. Chad is going insane. You guys are seeing this, right? The actual Attorney General. She's the actual Attorney General. His cracked tablet was somehow still recording, capturing every second of this insane moment. But you made one mistake, Sarah continued, her voice steady as a judge's gavel. You thought I'd immediately flash my badge, use my power, prove your point that I'm just another corrupt official who hides behind their position. Instead, I let you show everyone exactly who you are, a criminal who never learned her lesson. Patricia tried to run. In her panic, she spun too fast and her foot caught on her own measuring tape, the one she'd weaponized against us for weeks. She went down hard, face first into Sarah's grandmother's daffodil bed. The flowers caught her perfectly styled hair, her white blazer, her dignity. She landed in a sprawl that would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetically perfect. The measuring tape unrolled beside her like it was taking one final measurement, the distance of her fall from grace. Poetic justice served with a side of daffodils. Rodriguez helped Patricia to her feet, professional despite pulling someone from a flower bed. She had dirt on her face, leaves in her hair, and her dignity thoroughly shredded. Ma'am, Rodriguez said, producing his cuffs, you're under arrest for filing a false police report, harassment of a state official, and, he glanced at Sarah. Embezzlement, fraud, and racketeering, Sarah supplied calmly. I'll be filing formal charges Monday morning. Wait. Brad came running from next door, USB drive held high. I have everything. Every crime. I'm pre-law and I want a deal. Rodriguez took the USB drive while securing Patricia's wrists. The click of the cuffs was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. Jake hadn't stopped narrating. Guys, we're at 2 million views and climbing. The Attorney General just got a Karen arrested with flowers. More neighbors appeared. The Hendersons, the Garcias, even reclusive old Pete, all with stories, all with evidence of Patricia's harassment campaign. Patricia's last words as they guided her to the patrol car. I'll sue everyone. My lawyer will destroy you all. Sarah watched the car disappear down the gravel road. No, she said quietly. You won't. Because tomorrow, I'm personally filing charges with the state. Your days of terrorizing good people are over. We were having dinner on the porch when the mail arrived. A postcard from Millbrook Heights showed Patricia at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. New HOA president brings order to community, the caption read. She wore a new bedazzled measuring tape. I started laughing uncontrollably. Sarah looked concerned until I gasped, look up Millbrook Heights Attorney General. She typed quickly, then saw it. Colonel Maria Santos, USMC retired. 25 years military justice. Zero tolerance policy. Has prosecuted 73 HOA fraud cases in 3 years. Sarah read it twice, then started giggling. The giggle became hysteria. We laughed until our sides hurt. She moved to a Marine Colonel's district, Sarah wheezed. A Marine Colonel who specializes in HOA fraud. Jake burst through our back door. Mrs. Sarah. We need a follow-up video. Karen moves to Marine Attorney General Town. Later, as Sarah sat watering her grandmother's daffodils while Jake filmed what would become another viral video, he asked, "What would you tell others dealing with HOA Karens?" Sarah smiled, the same warm smile I'd fallen in love with years ago. "Document everything. Know your rights. And remember, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes the quietest person is the most dangerous." "But you're super nice," Jake protested. "That's the point, Jake. Real power isn't about using it. It's about knowing when not to. Like when those officers saluted me." "Exactly." Jake's eyes lit up. Patricia spent weeks measuring everyone else. She never stopped to measure herself. 6 months later, Sarah gets mail that makes her laugh so hard she cries. But that's another story. The point is this: bullies count on their victims being powerless. They count on people being too scared, too isolated, too overwhelmed to fight back. Patricia thought she was picking on a quiet wife who worked at some downtown law firm. She had no idea she was targeting the woman who'd built her career prosecuting exactly her kind of crimes. But here's the real lesson: you don't need to be the Attorney General to stand up to bullies. You just need to be willing to fight for what's right. Document everything. Know your rights. Find allies. And never, ever let a measuring tape-wielding tyrant steal what your family built. Because sometimes the person you're trying to intimidate has been quietly waiting for you to make exactly the mistakes you're making. And when that moment comes, when the truth finally gets revealed, when justice finally gets served, well, let's just say it's worth the wait. Our lake cabin is still standing. Sarah's grandmother's daffodils still bloom every spring. And somewhere in a maximum security HOA community, Patricia is probably measuring someone else's grass, completely unaware that she's about to meet another prosecutor who doesn't take kindly to bullies. Some people never learn. But for the rest of us, life is good. The coffee still tastes better in Grandma's percolator. The sunsets are still magic. And every morning, when Sarah sits on that porch watching the mist rise off the lake, she whispers the same thing her grandmother taught her. Morning neighbors. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. Not the measuring tapes or the clipboards or the fake authority. Just neighbors taking care of neighbors, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing who you really are.